Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Liverpool FC Wire Podcast. I'm Owen James. This is your Liverpool news update. There's an awful lot going round at the moment in terms of players going, players staying, players departing, players being signed, and just there's a lot of news swirling around. And I think for me, it's heading towards another summer of change, isn't it? It's heading towards yet another summer of change. It really is. And then are you going to have the argument again that it's another transition season, which, certainly cannot be the case again. We can't write off yet another season. But worrying things about players going, and then obviously if players do go, with the squad being as thin as it is, you need to replace those players. You can't have a situation where you allow a number of players to leave. We already know that Robbo's going. We already know that Salah's going. Heavy rumours that Alisson could be going. So you need replacements. You can't just let them go. Obviously Costas is coming back, but Costas is not good enough to replace Andy Robertson. If Alisson goes, where do we get a number one keeper from? As I said on the video this morning, go get Kameen Kelleher back. For me, Giorgio Mamalashvili he's a backup keeper. That's all he ever will be. He's genuinely is, and he's another Mike Hooper, isn't he? That's what he is. Look, let's have a little look, shall we? Some stories that are doing the rounds at this moment in time. Right. First one, which will, I think, split the fan base. This is a guy who causes so much argument within the fan base, doesn't he? Anthony Gordon. Some fans love him, some fans hate him, some fans don't want to see him come. He's another player, a bit like Curtis Jones, who divides the fan base massively, massively. Anthony Gordon came close to joining Liverpool 2 years ago when a £75 million fee was agreed before Newcastle pulled the plug. He could be sold this summer, but Liverpool's interest unlikely to be revived. Bayern Munich leading the chase, with Chelsea also keen, where Xabi Alonso could be the manager of Chelsea. Obviously, that is a story that is doing the rounds today. But look, Anthony Gordon, not for Liverpool. So it seems at this moment in time. So it looks like that one is one that is not going to happen. James Pearce reporting that, and we know that James Pearce is a guy who has the inside, track on all things are going on. We know he's a brief journalist. We know he's a guy who gets the briefs from the club. So look, Anthony Gordon not coming, not going to be a Liverpool player. I think Gordon would probably have hoped that at some point in his career he would have been a Liverpool player, but I think this now pretty much rules that one out. Again, I like Anthony Gordon. I think he's a good player. I think he really is, and I think put him out wide. He's quick, he's aggressive, he's direct. I think he can do a job, but hey, what do I know? What do I know? So Anthony Gordon, definitely not. Now, to me, what I'm hearing is that it is not Anthony Gordon that Liverpool are interested in, which is a shame because we do need a few more homegrown players, especially obviously if Curtis Jones was to leave and Harvey Elliott was to be sold once he comes back from loan at Villa, which has been a disaster. Bradley Barcola is another name that has been heavily linked with Liverpool yet again. Barcola appears to be the alternative to Anthony Gordon. It appears that Liverpool are more interested in Bradley Barcola and one other player rather than Anthony Gordon. Barcola, obviously a young player, still coming through at PSG, Champions League winner. Started his career with Lyon, where he made 47 appearances, scoring 7 goals with 12 assists. Played 145 times for Paris Saint-Germain, 38 goals, 37 assists. So, decent return on numbers there. You're looking at, 60, 75 goal contributions in 145 games, better than 1 in 2. And he doesn't always start either, so something worth noting. He's a guy who can play in a multiple of positions, so certainly would fill a need with Liverpool, especially with Ekitike being out for a substantial amount of next season. Perhaps a desire not to pay for a striker that's then going to be pretty much surplus to requirements once Ekitike is back. 110 appearances as a left winger, 34 as a right winger, 22 as a centre forward. So, can play in a number of different positions. Obviously, left wing is his position. 32 and 32, 64 goal contributions. Certainly a better player than Cody Gakpo on the left wing. And look, I'd put Anthony Gordon as a better player than Cody Gakpo as well. The that is, of course, causing a hell of a lot of interest is this young man here, 19-year-old Yan Diamonde, very much fitting what we seem to be buying these days. It does seem that Liverpool now have moved away from after the Isak and Wirtz transfers and looking at these young players between 19 and 21, 22 to bring in, you look at Xhaka, you look at Leone, for example, all young players. But Diamonde is a guy who's been ripping it up in the Bundesliga this season. These are his stats. 30 games in the Bundesliga, 12 goals, 8 assists, 20 goal contributions in 30 games. Pretty good return. Also played in the German Cup where he's had a goal and an assist in 3. So this season, 22 goal contributions in 33. His stats, his facts are pretty impressive too. He's fast, he's aggressive, he's direct, he can go past a man, he can beat a man. He is a top player, an absolute top player, even at such a young age, and he's only going to get better. I mean, this is a player who, is looking, I think, more and more like he could honestly be a Mo Salah replacement, and a player that I think, would get bums off seats. Is very exciting. However, the problem with this one is that RB do control the narrative when it comes to Diamonde. Now, there is stories going around that Liverpool have already held talks with his representatives over a possible move in the summer. However, RB, given the fact that they are likely to qualify for the Champions League, 5 points clear of their nearest challengers in the Bundesliga with only a couple of games to go, determined to hang on to Yan Diamonde, especially if they're playing Champions League football next season. So it does look like it would be a very expensive transfer, somewhere between 80 and 100 million if it was to be done. It would obviously be a test of whether Liverpool are ultimately determined to bring in Yan Diamonde. Look, this is a great player. And, if you're only going to buy one of Diamonde or Barcola, to me, you get Diamonde. Diamonde is so much better player than Barcola. I personally don't rate Barcola. I don't actually like Barcola. I think he's inconsistent. I'd rather Anthony Gordon than Bradley Barcola, if I'm being honest with you. I'd rather have Cody Gakpo than Bradley Barcola. I do think that Yan Diamonde, though, is a very, very special talent. There he is there, Yan Diamonde. Very, very special talent. And those figures this season from his Bundesliga campaign, again, exceptionally impressive. So, look, guys, let me know your thoughts. Who would you have? Are you sad that Gordon is now off the radar? Would you like Bradley Barcola? Would you like Yan Diamonde? Or would you be greedy and like both of them? Let me know in the comments your thoughts on that one. Guys, obviously, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Help us to continue to build. Right. Look, story on Curtis Jones. Obviously, Curtis's contract is coming up towards its climax, its end. Story obviously doing the rounds that, look, there's a lot of uncertainty. Now, if Curtis was linked with a departure in January to Inter Milan, which obviously didn't go through. Liverpool not wanting to lose any players in January, given the fact that obviously we are lacking in players. We really do seem to have a real kind of, a real lack of squad depth. And look, we wouldn't want to lose players, certainly not, Curtis Jones. Now, Curtis Jones' contract expires at the end of next season, so he's entering, going to be entering the end of his final year next year. Now, according to Paul Joyce and a number of others, Curtis Jones prefers to stay at Liverpool, but he wants to be a starter, and if that isn't guaranteed, he might consider leaving to develop his career. Now, he's also thought to want a pay rise to sign a new contract of around about £200,000 a week, which some of you may balk at. But when you consider that Cody Gakpo is getting £250,000 a week and Ryan Gravenberch is getting £275,000 a week, you may not think it quite as ridiculous. Curtis also has that ability to play in a number of different positions too. He's done really well at right back in recent weeks. He can also play as a 6, as an 8. He can do a number of different roles. He can play out wide. Curtis, things could change depending, of course, on what happens with other midfielders at the club. But all this comes on the back of stories that maybe Curtis has fallen out with the manager. Now, he did seemingly, during Arne Slot's first season, really kind of become one of Arne's favourite players. And he played a number of games and scored a number of vital goals, including that one at Anfield against Chelsea. So, look, it's a difficult situation, but it does seem like Curtis goes from between being a favoured player and not being a favoured player. And Curtis, I think, is kind of in danger of becoming almost James Milner-esque in terms of his jack of all trades, master of none kind of position. Now, if Alexis McAllister was to leave, for example, this summer, could Curtis Jones be seen as being a McAllister replacement and Liverpool not go and get another player in that position? Adam Wharton, of course, has been heavily linked, but there's obviously a lot going around about this. Now, Curtis has been linked with moves to Spurs if they don't get relegated. Aston Villa reportedly interested. Inter Milan reportedly back in as well. Newly promoted Coventry City also allegedly interested in the Scouser. Look, I personally would love to keep Curtis. We need Scousers in this club. We need homegrown talent, and Curtis is one of those. Curtis is one of us. Well, one of you. Okay, I'm not from Liverpool. My great nanny was from Liverpool, but you know, yeah, my great nana was from Liverpool. Hence why I spot Liverpool. But there you go. So look, guys. Look, at the end of the day, you know, Curtis, I personally would love to see him stay, love to see him get a new contract, and obviously be a big part of the team going forward. Now, of course, I've just mentioned Alexis McAllister. This comes again from another in-the-know journalist, Paul Joyce. Again, there is doubt surrounding the future of Alexis McAllister. His camp said no negotiations were presently taking place regarding a contract extension. Now, Alexis McAllister has not had a good season at all, has he? He really has struggled this season. He has not done well. Now, his contract expires in 2028, so, you know, you're coming up to the time with 2 years to go when you look at renewing players' contracts. Curtis now at 1 year. Alexis, obviously, Dom Szoboszlai is another one. So, you know, at the end of the day, what do we do in terms of this situation? Look, if there is no contract offer, there is no situation where where Alexis, you know, is going to extend, or there's been any extension offered. This could rumour that maybe, just maybe, Liverpool are looking to sell. So what would you do? Would you sell him? Let me think, you know, have a think. Let me know what you think about that one. You know, with obviously rumours going around that Real Madrid are interested in him, where would you go with this one? Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts on this one. Obviously, guys, look, Alexis has been a top player, but he has really struggled in the past few days. But you know, past few weeks and months in this season. He did have a good game against Palace, worth mentioning. But Alexis, you know, can he get back to his best? And has the fact that Real Madrid have reportedly been interested, and the fact that he's constantly discussing this move to Madrid or to Spain, really turned his head a little? You know, where are we up to with this Alexis McAllister situation? Would you sell Alexis McAllister and look at other players? Guys, let me know your thoughts on that one. Thank you for watching Liverpool FC Wire. Please, of course, like, comment, share and subscribe, and I'll catch you very, very soon.